Yes, they come by. Come on in. Mr. Stevens. Come on in. Let's give it. Sure. Welcome. Thank all of you for coming out. For those who don't know, I'm Sheriff Todd Delane. I know for the camera, you want the spelling, so it's Delain. So on Saturday, May 1st, at approximately 7:28, the Brown County Public Safety Communications Center received calls reporting an active shooter incident at the Duck Creek Kitchen and Bar inside the Radisson Hotel at Airport Drive in the village of Ashwaubenon. For those who are not familiar with this area, this is an extremely large complex. The Radisson Hotel, which includes the Duck Creek Kitchen and Bar, is connected to a conference center that includes several large banquet halls. And on the far east of the complex is the casino and the parking ramp, meaning that a person can travel a significant distance and enter several different rooms within the complex with numerous entrance and exit points. On Saturday, during the time period of this incident, there were several hundred people within the complex area, including Oneida Nation employees, hotel guests, restaurant patrons, individuals using the banquet hall, including a wedding celebration, and then guests of the casino. Officers from the Brown County law enforcement agencies, including the Brown County Sheriff's Office, Oneida Police Department, Ashwaubenon Public Safety, Green Bay Police Department, Hobart Lawrence Police Department, De Pere Police Department, Wrightstown Police Department, and the Wisconsin State Patrol immediately responded. Law enforcement agencies from the Outagamie County Sheriff's Office and Appleton Police Department, who were working with the Oneida Police Department in Seymour for the gas leak evacuation, also responded. A total of approximately 75 law enforcement agencies immediately arrived in the area. Area fire and EMS teams were dispatched to assist officers in the rescue and treatment of victims, which included County Rescue, Ashwaubenon Public Safety, Green Bay Metro Fire, Howard Fire, Airport Fire, De Pere Fire, Gold Cross, Seymour Fire and Rescue, and Luxembourg Rescue. And I'm sure that I'm still missing some other law enforcement agency or fire agencies that were en route. Responding officers formed contact teams to enter the complex and respond to the active threat. Additional teams entered with fire and EMS to render first aid to the victims. This is trained as part of our countywide tactical alert response to active shooter situations. And for those in the local media, many of you have covered the countywide tactical alert response training that we have done at the Rush Center and St. Norbert College. A contact team from the Green Bay Police Department was able to engage and neutralize the suspect outside of the complex on the north side of the building near the parking structure. The lone suspect was pronounced dead at the scene. So what we know at this time, the suspect was a former employee of the Duck Creek Kitchen and Bar who was terminated earlier this year. It is our understanding that the Oneida Nation also advised the suspect that he was forbidden from being on the property. On the night of the incident, the suspect entered the complex on the south side of the building between the casino and restaurant near the banquet halls. He walked to the Duck Creek Kitchen and Bar and walked directly towards the back of the restaurant towards a waiter station. This waiter station is open to the public and not an employee-only restricted area. The suspect fatally shot 2 employees at close range with a 9mm handgun. This occurred with approximately 50 patrons inside the restaurant. The suspect then departed the restaurant and made his way outside to the north side of the complex. The suspect then shot one additional male who is also a Duck Creek Kitchen and Bar employee. It was very quickly after the suspect shot the third victim that officers from the Green Bay Police Department neutralized the threat. I am not at liberty to discuss the officer-involved shooting investigation. That investigation is being conducted by the Wisconsin Department of Justice, Division of Criminal Investigations. This is normal and part of our state law requirement to have an independent outside agency investigate officer-involved shootings. The victims of this tragic event are Ian J. Simpson. He's 32 years of age and was shot inside the restaurant. Jacob T. Bartle, 35 years of age, shot inside the restaurant. And Daniel L. Mulligan, 28 years of age. He was shot outside the complex. And as of right now, we know that he's in serious but stable condition in a hospital in Milwaukee. The lone gunman is Bruce K. Polful, age 62. I want to briefly talk about stabilizing the incident. Police, fire, and EMS agencies work together to treat and remove injured victims and locate and evaluate those who sheltered in place. Over 30 eyewitnesses were identified and interviewed, while other non-witnesses were directed to Pioneer Elementary School as a reunification site. Over 230 individuals were transferred to the elementary school and spoken to about this incident. A special thank you to the Green Bay Area Transit Bus for assistance in moving those individuals from the complex to the elementary school. I would also like to thank the Family Services Crisis Center, American Red Cross, and Salvation Army for their assistance working with those at the elementary school. The crime scene was identified and locked down for processing until yesterday afternoon, and this was done by the Wisconsin State Crime Lab. As I indicated earlier, the Wisconsin Department of Justice, Division of Criminal Investigation, is handling the officer-involved shooting investigation, while the Brown County Sheriff's Office is leading the attempted homicide investigation. Both the Wisconsin Department of Justice and the Brown County Sheriff's Office has been assisted by the FBI from the Milwaukee Field Office and the Green Bay resident office. At this time, the Brown County Sheriff's Office is continuing the double homicide and attempted homicide investigation. Anyone who has direct information or eyewitness observation or cell phone footage of the shooting and has not yet been interviewed by law enforcement, they are asked to contact Lieutenant Brian Slinger at 920-448-4229. The Wisconsin Department of Justice, DCI, is continuing to investigate the officer-involved shooting and will be providing their own press release of information as it becomes available. Our deepest condolences go out to the family and friends of those who have lost their life in this senseless act of violence. We appreciate everyone's support and patience as we work through this investigation. This incident has impacted the lives of many in our community, including the victims, their families, emergency first responders and their families, witnesses, and the staff and patrons of the Radisson. We are very fortunate to have a vast and talented resources available with police, fire, rescue, dispatch, and medical facilities here in Brown County. who all came together to keep this community safe. I want to thank the Oneida Nation for all their support and assistance during this difficult time. Finally, we are extremely proud of our law enforcement officers in our community, running into this dangerous situation in the midst of chaos. These are difficult times in law enforcement. Our actions are often critiqued and second-guessed by those who could not do our jobs. The officers in our community did not hesitate to respond in the time of need. They should be commended for their bravery in handling this tragic situation. With us today, I have Chief Brian Uhl from Ashwaubenon on Public Safety. I have Captain Ryan Chaffee from the Wisconsin State Patrol. I have Assistant Chief Joel Maximum from Oneida Police Department. I have Mr. Stevenson from the Oneida Nation, Commander Warwick from the Green Bay Police Department, Chief Runge, as of today, from the Green Bay Police Department, Captain David Poteet from our investigative division, and our supervisor, Lieutenant Brian Slinger, who is the supervising agent for this homicide, double homicide and attempted homicide. So at this time, I can answer any questions. Again, I will not be able to answer questions specifically about the officer-involved shooting. Again, that will be handled by the Wisconsin Department of Justice Division of Criminal Investigations. So,
could you spell the names of the victims that were injured as well as the suspect, just to make sure we have those correctly?
Sure. I'll have sheets to hand out.
we'll have sheets to hand out to everyone.
What do you know about the suspect and why he would have done this?
Well, that's part of the ongoing investigation as occurs, as we look at it. We know that he was a former employee there. We know that he was familiar with at least some of the employees there. And so that is part of what we're doing now, is to try to determine that motive, to determine why he would do this. But we know that this is not a random act or anything like that. We believe that it was targeted at least to some of those individuals.
When you talked to it that night, was there any particular incident or something that happened that it happened on Saturday night at that time?
No.
The people that he was shooting?
No, there's nothing to believe that specifically something immediate to that caused this incident to happen.
Would you describe this as a domestic situation?
At this time, I think we're still looking into it. I don't know that I would call it a domestic. I would call it a person who likely knows at least one of the suspects, one of the victims, if not more.
Do we know how long the suspect worked at Vinda Creek?
I do not know that.
Do you know why he was let go and why he was not allowed on the premises?
That would be something we would want to direct towards the Oneida Nation and their HR department.
Was he legally possessing that firearm?
I do not know that. That is something that we'll be looking into as part of our investigation on his ability to possess a firearm. Certainly, part of the restrictions is he could not have it at the casino or the Radisson. It's not a place that you're supposed to have a firearm. But as we know, people who commit crimes like this don't follow any of the laws, especially something like this.
And to clarify, name the suspect, saying that there was another employee that had a restraining order against him. Are you guys aware of that? And how does that play into the investigation?
We are aware of that, and that's part of the investigation.
Can you name who he was targeting?
That will be part of the investigation, and something we'll look at if it was specific to one person or multiple people. That will be something that we're looking into.
And then one just follow-up question. Those court records say that there was an injunction without a firearm restriction. Was that the right call?
Well, I don't get into guessing whether or not, without all the facts, whether or not he should have a firearm. That's something that would be evaluated in the courts and a determination made. So that's not something I'm even going to comment on.
And to clarify, you said 75 law enforcement agencies or officers?
Officers immediately responded.
Okay, thank you.
It's probably hard to tell, but when officers arrived and shot the suspect, was he still shooting more people? Do you think there would have been more victims had they not intervened when they did?
Well, I think that'll be part of the DCI investigation related to whether or not there'd be more victims or anything else. So I'm not going to get into that part of it. Certainly, this individual is a threat, and it's obvious based upon his past activities.
Do you know the timeline from when the first person was shot to when the suspect was?
The whole incident transpired in 10 minutes or less.
Do we know if the suspect is from here?
Yes, the suspect is from Brown County.
Do we know, has he had prior contact with police?
That is something that we're looking at, but from my initial information I received is he does not have a lot of contact with law enforcement.
If you could just again describe your, I should say, comment on the law enforcement response, because a lot of agencies represented here.
Yeah, so active shooter training is something here in Brown County we've been working on for an extended period of time. We have what's called a tactical alert response, and for many of the media outlets that are here locally, they've come to watch us train. It is a county-wide training that involves all law enforcement agencies, but it also includes our fire and rescue personnel. So we train to get medical personnel into a dangerous situation potentially to get to victims quickly when we may not have identified exactly where the suspect is at this point. So this is something that we have done in the past for the past several years, and we will continue to do. In fact, at last month's Chiefs meeting, we approved for additional joint countywide training for spring of next year on this specific type of incident. So it's ongoing training we have done and will continue to do.
Can we talk a little more about the exiting of civilians? Did a lot of people just run out right away, or were they escorted out, kind of like?
I think there's a little bit of both. I have to say that as far as the Oneida Nation and their preparation for this, it was very, very well done. They went into an immediate lockdown and evacuation process. So for even if anyone has talked to anyone who was inside the casino, you probably heard that activity stopped and they immediately started the evacuation. So this is something not only on the law enforcement end, but the Oneida Nation is, and their security staff is prepared for and taken appropriate action when these situations have come up. So some people, when that happens, are immediately trying to get out. Others are trying to find safe locations. But generally speaking, as far as business related, I saw the press conference with the Oneida Nation yesterday. I know that they do ALICE training, which is similar to what you would see in schools when you have an active shooter situation, and people are moving to get to safety as quickly as you can to get out of danger and not just staying put where they could potentially be a victim.
Sheriff, was the third victim shot outside, was the shooter seeking out restaurant employees, or was it coincidence that he ran to that person outside? And was he trying to continue with the violence? Was he trying to flee at that time? Can you give us an understanding of that?
Well, that is one of the things that we're really looking into as well. How that contact occurred, if it was a situation where he knew the person and it was an opportunity, or if he sought the person out. We don't know the answer to that question. That is something we're definitely looking at. And I can't at this point say for certain whether or not the suspect knew 100% that victim. So those are the things that we're looking into. What is the relationship between them? Did they know one another? And how did that occur? Was it because he was in close proximity, did that person try to take certain type of action? All of those things are things that we're gonna look into.
Was there any kind of an order that said he was not supposed to be on the premises or at the restaurant?
No, it's, Sarah, that's something that occurs in many businesses. It's basically when a person who's unwanted in a business or another location, that business tells them, you are no longer welcome here. You're banned or forbidden from being here. If you come back here and an employee or security, anyone sees you, they're going to contact law enforcement and have you removed and potentially cited for trespassing to the business. So from my understanding, that's what was occurring. They'd taken steps, told him he's not wanted, don't come back to this location, and that's where we're at.
That seems pretty heavy-handed for someone that's, if someone's just terminated because for whatever reason, but if you're putting a caveat on you're terminated and also you're not allowed here, that rises to, I would think, a level that many of us would question as to what led to that termination, to where there was a prohibition of them returning to the property.
Yeah, so I don't know that that's not uncommon to be.
Mr. Stevens, would you be able to speak to standard operating procedures for people terminated from tribal enterprises, and are they prohibited from being on property, or?
Well, yeah, those are personnel issues that we can't, is like, you know, the sheriff said, is like, you know, there's a process and evaluating and looking at, you know, what happened, what could be different, and what can be rented. And so personnel, on the personnel side, you know, those are the things we can't really comment on right now because the information is still coming in and we're making sure we understand the entire situation as it is.
Is it standard operating procedure, though, for that to be the case?
No.
Between the termination and the shooting, had he shown up back at the complex at all that you're aware of?
Not that I'm aware of.
Did anybody try to intervene before the shooting? Did anybody notice that he was on the property before shots were fired?
Yeah, that'd be a situation we can't comment on at this point.
And that's something we'll look at, but I don't believe that's the case. I think the initial information we have is that he entered in and went directly to the restaurant.
How quick did that happen?
Minutes. It's minutes from the time that he enters in to the time he goes to the restaurant.
In a crowd, huge crowd of people?
Yeah, you know, it's a Saturday, and it's 7 o'clock in the afternoon, 7:30 in the evening. So there's people in the banquet halls, there's people at the casino, there's people staying in the hotel. That complex is busy on a regular basis, maybe a little less now because of COVID-19, but that's a busy area. And as I indicated earlier, there were several hundred people there. So in each part of that facility.
You said he used a 9mm. How easy is that to conceal and walk right through and nobody noticed that he's carrying a firearm?
Any handgun can be easily concealed.
Also with this third suspect, or this third person, victim, did he follow the suspect out? Do we know?
We don't know that at this point.
Do you know if he tried to blend in with the crowd as they were leaving, as everybody's running when they hear the shots being fired?
The suspect, that is something we'll look at if he was trying to blend in or exactly what he was doing. It's too early in the investigation to try to pin down exactly what he was doing. But that's something we'll look at. Hopefully we can get a good idea of what he was doing at that point, or if he was looking for additional targets, or if he's trying to escape, or whatever the individual is trying to do.
What do we know about the suspect's interaction with the officer before he was shot and killed? Was he trying to run? Was he trying to shoot back? Surrender? Anything like that?
Again, that would be very specific to the officer involved shooting investigation, which is being conducted by the Wisconsin Department of Justice, Division of Criminal Investigation. Therefore, I can't even talk about that. I don't know all of those details. They're handling all of that, the interviews, and it wouldn't be appropriate for me to comment about that.
This is a question for Vice Chairman Stevens.
I'm
A question for Vice Chairman Stevens.
Yes.
The fact that the suspect was able to come in with a weapon and suspectedly terminate 3 people, does that mean that there are gaps in you guys' security, and are you going to be re-looking at that?
We'll definitely be re-looking at the access to the facility, but like a mall. There's multiple entry points and exit points, and so those are going to be difficult to manage, but something we will definitely look at. This is different than the casino where there's the security guards at every entrance. You know, they're carding individuals as they come in. Surveillance is all over the place in the casino. And in coordination with the Radisson, we'll be looking at that because there's basically one entry point into the casino from the Radisson. And so we'll be definitely analyzing how we can do this better and how we can keep our patrons safer.
And then yesterday, you guys allowed people to get vehicles as long as they were on the second floor of the parking lot, I believe, but what about the first floor?
Well, first floor was still managed by the State Crime Lab, and so second floor on up, we allowed anyone who had vehicles or any personal items above.
What was his title or role at the restaurant?
I believe he was the food and beverage manager.
How were employees notified that he was not allowed back on the premises? Was there any information to the employees that if they did see him, to call the police?
That is some of the part of the information that we're looking at as well to see, you know, if our employees knew. You know, we have a meeting actually in a little bit about to go over all of those internal communications and
So there was some communication out there?
to my knowledge, there was, but how not everyone who's through the pandemic, you know, we had some layoffs, we had a lot of different things, dynamics through the pandemic that we're going through right now.
Sorry if you said this already, but how long did he actually work there?
That's one of the things we're looking at as well.
Will there be any trauma support resources available for any witnesses who weren't employees?
Yes, currently yesterday they had EAP services, employee assistance services, Brown County counselors. We had 2 counselors from Menominee Nation, and our internal counseling staff were on site yesterday, and we have scheduled times today where the counselor's at, and that's open to all community members, staff, and their families.
And Sheriff, can you say if any of the officers, or the officer who shot the suspect, is on administrative leave?
Yes, I spoke to Chief Runge, and he wanted me to pass along that as part of normal protocol, the officers that were involved in the shooting are on administrative leave, which would be standard procedure for any law enforcement agency in the state of Wisconsin where an officer is involved in this type of situation.
You know, we've spoken about counseling services for the victims, employees, and witnesses. What about the officers who responded?
Yes, I know that in agencies like ours and others here, today we have police officer support teams or peer officer support teams. And what we do is debrief. We talk about these type of issues because just like it's traumatic for those who witness it, it is also a traumatic situation for those officers that are involved in this. And as part of our normal procedure and stuff like this, we make sure our officers are okay and give them time to process everything that occurred.
Do we know how many shots were fired by the suspect and police?
I don't have that. I would not be able to comment on the police part of it, but it's several shots in total.
Witnesses said that the victim outside Mulligan tried to throw a punch at the shooter after he recognized him. Can you comment on that?
That is something that we'll look at. I think, you know, those are details that we would have to follow up on. I'm not sure if that's true or not. Certainly, we're all pulling for Mr. Mulligan. I want for him to have a full recovery as quickly as possible. Certainly everyone here and throughout the community is wishing the very best for him. And I think, you know, hopefully we'll be able to get some information directly from him at some point. We have not been able to talk to him at this point. Number one thing for him right now is just to get better.
I'm assuming body cameras were running at the time of this incident?
Yes.
Will those be released at any point?
For those agencies that would have had them, that would be something that would be subject to open records request when the time comes. But obviously, again, it's under investigation, so that's going to be a little bit of time.
And you mentioned a little bit about how video plays such an important role in this. You're asking people for video footage. We know everybody has a cell phone these days. We saw footage from witnesses and people trying to get out. How much video have you gotten, and why are you asking for more? What does this do for you?
Well, we have. I don't know how much video we actually have at this point, but anytime we can get video evidence that documents what happens, each little piece of that provides another perspective to get a full and complete understanding of what occurred. So if anyone has any video that they could share with us, again, contact Lieutenant Brian Slinger, and we will make arrangements to have that collected, because again, our goal is to get a complete, full understanding of everything that transpired, and hopefully be able to shed as much light on this tragic event as possible.
Sheriff, you said the 2 employees inside the restaurant were shot at close range. Do you know if the suspect walked in, tried to hide the fact that he had a gun and tried to talk to them and then ambush them, if you will? Or did they have any indication that, you know, this was about to occur when they saw this person?
I don't know that specific in detail about that, but the information that I have for you today is that he walked directly to the back of the restaurant to that waiter station. He had opportunity, I suppose, to direct his violence to other individuals if he wanted, because there were approximately 50 people in the restaurant. And he walked directly back to that waiter station and directed the violence to those individuals.
You said 50 people. I haven't been inside of the restaurant. Is that full, or is that, what kind of capacity is that? Do you know?
I don't know what the capacity is. Do you know, Brian?
It's a pretty large space now. They opened it up since they redid it, and it's more of an open concept. I can't speak to the exact capacity, but from what I saw on the tables in the aftermath, it seemed like a good 60% of the tables probably would have had patrons at them, so 50 is probably a good number.
Sheriff, when investigators went in and started, you know, clearing out, obviously we know that people were barricading themselves. Can you talk about how people were barricading themselves, and what did it look like when you guys got inside? Because we know not everybody tried to run out.
Well, I think one of the things I tried to do is paint a picture of what we were going into from the beginning. It's a large complex, multiple entrance and exit points, multiple rooms, and people all over. So when we have a response, a law enforcement response for this, they're assessing, constantly assessing. What do I have? Is that a threat? Is that not a threat? What do we have going on? So, and then when you gain control, because we're trying to control areas as much as we can, we're making contact with those individuals. So it's an ongoing assessment of our environment as we're working through it. This is a large area. There's a lot of people. We don't know exactly who we're looking for, right? So those are all challenges, and that's what we train for, assessing these type of things and moving as teams through it. And that's why we put the time in to train for this type of situation. It's chaotic, and you have people running and people crying and people screaming and maybe people pointing for whatever reason because they're trying to get attention to somebody else that might not be related. At the same time, we know that there are victims down. So we have to form a team, get medical personnel to those individuals as quickly as we can, as safely as we can, and try to render aid as quickly as we can. So it's a very fluid environment that's being constantly evaluated by all of the officers. And, you know, from a training perspective, you have to remember that we have all of these officers. They may not exactly know everyone, right? And you're seeing people move with weapons throughout the place, right? Because all of the other officers have weapons out. So it is a very chaotic situation that has to be trained, and it has to be thought out on how you go about handling these situations. And again, all of those officers who, in essence, were running towards the sound of gunfire, or in a situation where they know they were entering a very potentially deadly situation, we have to commend them for their bravery, because not everyone can do that. And for the family members that are at home, knowing that those officers are getting in squad cars every day and could respond to that, there's a lot of stress on their family members, including their children. So that's part of our evaluation and debrief of this stuff. And again, everybody who's here could not be more proud of what those officers had to do, and the way they responded. You know, we'll look at it, we'll learn from it, and we'll continue to train and be prepared and ready here in Brown County. If it ever happens again, hopefully we never have a situation like this again ever in Brown County, but trust me, all of these law enforcement professionals here with me today, we will be prepared for the situation when it comes up. And just like we were on Saturday, we will be prepared, and we will fine tune what we have to, so that if there's ways we can improve, we'll be improved if needed.
The two
Sheriff,
victims
I think
shot.
that's an exceptional summary of it, and I think it's a good time. Well, I just want to remind you that we do have the written documentation for correct spellings of names and ages of the victims. And then obviously, as we move forward, more information becomes available, we'll certainly be putting that out.
All right, with that, I'll take one more question in the back.
Are the victims of the shooter members of the tribe?
I don't know that. Okay.
Thanks, folks.
Thank you very much for coming out today. That we can head back upstairs. Brad?